They're in the wrong places. Okay, welcome to the Independence Chronicle. No matter how you looked at it, it proved to be a false alarm. However, it essentially provided a quote-unquote dress rehearsal for political and military leaders for the battles of Lexington and Concord that would be 7.5 months later. This is the history of the powder alarm. In response to some rather unpopular British actions in 1772, many of the 13 colonies elected to form committees of correspondence. The purpose of these committees was to inform the voters of the dealings and threats facing other colonies, as well as being responsible for making sure news accurately reflected the views of particular issues. They were instrumental in managing the colonial response to enforcement of the Tea Act, the Intolerable Acts, and other unpopular legislation brought on by the British. Now, in response to the Boston Tea Party, the British Parliament passed the highly unpopular Intolerable Acts. The man charged with enforcing said acts was General Thomas Gage, who had only become the governor of Massachusetts in May of 1774. Now, in trying to keep the peace and prevent a war between the Whigs and Tories, he came up with the idea of secretly removing military stores from storehouses. Secrecy of the mission was critical. Gage feared that any leakage of his plans would result in the concealment or even seizure of the stores by Patriot sympathizers before they got there. Now, the British Army had stockpiled supplies in several places throughout the colonies. Some were fortifications manned by a small garrison of troops, while others were just locked-up magazines. Now, most of the powder stored in these was under the control of the provincial government, while other stores were the property of the individual towns. One particular storehouse located near Boston, I believe. Nope, we're not ready for that one. Sorry, I'm trying to get the graphics ready for you. Okay, one particular storehouse located near Boston in what was then part of Charlestown was controlled by William Brattle. He was the leader of the provincial militia and had not publicly sided with either the Loyalists or Patriots. In a letter dated August 27th, 1772, Brattle notified Governor Gage that the king's powder was the only supply remaining in that storehouse, as the towns had already removed all of theirs. Gage decided it needed to be brought back to Boston for safekeeping. On August 31st, Gage sent David Phipps, Middlesex County Sheriff, to Brattle with orders to remove the powder. So Brattle turned over the key to the powder house to Phipps. Orders by Gage were also given to ready a force of troops for action the next day, which did not go unnoticed by the local population. Early in the morning of September 1st, 1772, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel George Madison, a force of roughly 260 British troops from the 4th Regiment were rowed in secrecy up the Mystic River from Boston to a landing point near Winter Hill. It was from that point they marched about a mile to the powder house, a gunpowder magazine believed to have held the largest supply of gunpowder in Massachusetts. Phipps gave over the keys to the building to the troops, and shortly after sunrise, they removed all of the gunpowder. Now, across the countryside, rumors flew about British troop movements. The alarm had spread as far as Connecticut. People took up arms from all over the region and began streaming toward Boston. It's reported that in the space of 15 minutes, roughly 50 men were gathered, had equipped themselves, sent messengers out to surrounding towns, and left for Boston. On the second, bent on violence, several thousand men gathered in Cambridge, where they forced several notable people to flee and seek the protection of the military. Eventually, the facts caught up with the rumors, and militia units returned home. Gage was rather surprised by the reaction, even delaying and eventually canceling a second planned expedition to the Worcester storehouse, as you see on your screen. He grouped his troops in Boston and called for reinforcements from London, writing, quote, "If you think 10,000 men sufficient, send 20. If 1,000,000 is thought enough, give 2. You save both blood and treasure in the end." Now, this was a learning experience for militia forces throughout New England. After the powder alarm, they were much more cautious, even becoming intent on getting information about Gage's plans and troop movements. Ultimately, this caused the colonists to organize and institute a system of express riders and alarms that would prove extremely critical at Lexington and Concord and at Fort William and Mary, which we'll learn more about next time here on the Independence Chronicle. All right. How about that? That is